The Great Pyrenees was twice her size and had been following her for 3 weeks. The day it finally stopped following her was the day the whole family understood what it had been doing. Nadia Holbrook was 3 years old and afraid of nothing. She was specifically, actively, enthusiastically unafraid of their Great Pyrenees, a 115-pound animal named Cloud, who was, at this moment, standing behind her on the back patio, with his head at her shoulder height, while she marched toward the garden with a small plastic shovel and the absolute confidence of someone who has never once considered the possibility that things might go wrong. Cloud walked with her. He had been walking with her for 3 weeks. Her parents had noticed. You could not notice. Everywhere Nadia went in the yard, Cloud was 1 pace behind, not beside, behind. At shoulder height, his nose occasionally dipping toward the back of her neck, toward her ear, occasionally angling toward her face, when she turned around to show him things, which she did frequently, because she believed Cloud was interested in everything she was doing, which was fair, because he appeared to be. Jonah Holbrook found it charming. He filmed it repeatedly. He described it at dinner parties as the dog being devoted. His wife, Simone, a public health nurse, had watched it for 3 weeks and had a different word forming in her mind but hadn't said it yet. On the Tuesday of the 4th week, she said it. Something is different about how he follows her. Jonah looked at the footage on his phone. Cloud behind Nadia in the yard. Cloud behind Nadia at the sandbox. His nose at neck level, occasionally dipping toward the back of her neck, occasionally angling toward her face when she turned. Jonah said, "He's devoted. She's his person." Simone said, "Devoted dogs walk beside you. He's tracking something." She had been a public health nurse for 11 years. She had conducted communicable disease surveillance. She knew what continuous monitoring behavior looked like in a professional context. She was looking at it in her backyard in a 115-pound dog. She called their pediatrician the next morning and described what she was seeing, not in the dog, but in Nadia, the fatigue that came from nowhere in the early afternoons, the thirst that had increased over 2 weeks, the occasional fussiness that didn't match a clear cause. The nurse practitioner on the line said those symptoms together warranted a same-day blood draw. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nadia's blood glucose was 47 milligrams per deciliter at 11:30 in the morning. She had eaten breakfast. She had been active. In a child without metabolic abnormality, her glucose should have been between 70 and 100. It was 47. Drive Omar Rashid, pediatric endocrinologist, explained the insulin dysregulation with the patience of someone who has learned to translate complex metabolic processes for exhausted parents. Nadia's body was processing glucose inconsistently. The drops were episodic. They had been happening, based on the symptom timeline Simone described, for at least 3 weeks. He said something about dogs that Simone wrote down. He said, "When blood glucose is dysregulated in a child, the breath chemistry changes measurably before any external symptom appears. A large livestock guardian breed like a Great Pyrenees has a scent detection capacity that, by some estimates, is 300 times more acute than a human's. If this dog has been running close olfactory assessment of your daughter for 3 weeks, that is consistent with detection behavior, not attachment behavior. He would have registered the change in her breath from a considerable distance. The trailing position is efficient for sustained breath sampling without disruption." He looked at them. "You brought her in early. That changes the management considerably. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard." They drove home in the particular silence of parents who have been given a manageable diagnosis and are learning the shape of it. Jonah drove. Simone sat in the back with Nadia, who was asking about her snack and whether Cloud would be outside when they got home. He was outside. He was on the patio. He stood up when Nadia came through the back door and walked directly to her and pressed his nose briefly to the back of her neck. 1 breath. 2. 3. Then he stepped beside her, not behind her, and walked with her to the garden. Simone watched him, not behind anymore, beside. She looked at Jonah. He shook his head slowly. 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks and we thought it was devotion. Simone said, it was both. She was right. It was both. The surveillance and the love were not separate things in that dog. They were the same thing, expressed in the only language he had. Close, constant, nose at the level of what needed to be monitored, never far enough away to lose the thread. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Nadia is 4 now. She has a treatment plan and a glucose monitoring schedule, and a great Pyrenees who walks beside her in the yard. He still occasionally dips his nose toward the back of her neck. Old habit. New meaning. She still marches toward the garden with her plastic shovel like someone who has never once considered the possibility that things might go wrong. In 115 pounds of white fur, someone makes sure that confidence stays warranted. The next story involves a dog that refused to let a toddler go to bed for 3 consecutive nights. What the emergency room found when the family finally came in is the reason you stay for every story we tell.